Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Dinsmore. I'd like to thank you for being here today. We're going to be talking a little bit about welding safety, and we're also going to be doing a little bit of first aid in the classroom, lab, and shop. Before we get too far into it, I'd like to go over our performance objective. So that's essentially what you're going to learn today and how. So basically, upon completion of this assignment, the student will be able to explain what safety precautions to take in the lab, so what to do in case something happens, and then also demonstrate what to do if yourself or another person are injured. And then the TEA guidelines, the OSHA, some of you may or may not know what that is, and then the school district. Before we get too far, I'd like to talk a little bit about myself. Next slide. Again, my name is Paul Dinsmore. I did go to school here a long time ago. I've been welding for 14 years. I do have an associate's degree in applied science, welding technology. I am currently certified in MIG, TIG, and stick welding. You do know what MIG is, so for those of you, in what?
In stick welding.
In stick welding, okay, good. So some of you know what that is, some of you don't. Basically, they're all forms of welding processes. Depending on what you're welding and how you're welding and what you want out of it, they'll essentially be used accordingly. So MIG is typically for high production, TIG is for very clean, slow welds, and then stick is for dirty or outside welding. Currently, I'm the team lead at my current job in Arlington. I'm responsible for about 8 guys, and I have the luxury of showing them how to weld the exhaust systems for that vehicle way over there. That's a Cadillac Escalade. So if any of you guys drive an Escalade, a Tahoe, a Suburban, or anything like that within the last 8 or 9 years, there's a very, very good chance that I either welded it, one of my guys welded it, or I definitely knew the guy that welded it. So don't come to me if it's too bad. But anyway, now we get started into the actual presentation, I guess. Next slide, please. In this lesson, you're going to find out why it's important to use what's called PPE and other ways of preventing getting hurt. So essentially, PPE is personal protective equipment. So that's equipment that protects you, the user, from getting hurt or injured. And there's lots and lots of examples of PPE. I'm currently wearing PPE because I just got off of work. This is an FR jacket, so that means FR is fire resistant. You can actually hold a flame to this. It will burn, but the second you take the flame away, it'll auto extinguish itself, so it won't burn anymore. Same thing with the pants. And then I'm also wearing steel-toe boots. So these are all examples of what is required in the welding environment, because we do weld with hot things, sparks do go flying, and then we have something else called UV radiation, or ultraviolet radiation. A good way, an example of thinking about that is if everyone knows what sunburn is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's gotten a sunburn? Raise your hand. We've all gotten a sunburn, right? I'm redheaded, I get sunburned quick. So the way of thinking about that is, welding, you have a miniature sun right in front of you. It gives off UV radiation just like the sun does. And you can get burnt just like sunburn. It's called arc burn. And so if you don't cover your skin properly when you're welding, or if your buddy's welding next to you and he is giving you just the same amount of UV rays as the sun, you're going to get burnt all the same. UV radiation is invisible to the naked eye, so obviously the sun, you don't see the UV radiation getting burnt. On a cloudy day, you can get burnt and you won't even realize it. Same thing with welding. You feel no heat from the welding. Then next up is OSHA. So OSHA is the Occupational Safety and Health Environmental Association. They're the government agency responsible for the health and wellness of all employees throughout the United States. They have the task to ensure, basically the employer does what they're supposed to do to protect their employees. A good example of that is my current job. The OSHA regulates that they have to have a ventilation system to suck up all the exhaust for the weld fumes. There's a certain compliance level that they have to meet, and then so they come out and test it and things like that. And then we have to meet that level. Otherwise, we have to make appropriate changes and things like that. Now, enough of me talking. Who wants to actually see and touch some stuff? Now, you might get a little dirty, but it's all right.
I could care less.
I'm going to pass out a few examples of PPE. You can look at them, touch them, things like that. Essentially, what I want you guys to do is look at it and then tell me if it's something good and you could actually use it, or if it's something bad and we would need to be thrown away. So those are some gloves. Here's a pair of glasses. All of these have been welded in.
They smell kind of burnt.
They smell kind of burnt. Yep, that does happen from time to time. Okay, so who would like to go first?
So what did you want?
Let's start with glasses, or sorry, let's start with gloves first, since you guys have the gloves on already. Who has an example of a bad pair of gloves? Yes, sir.
These have a hole in it.
Now, why do you think that might be a bad thing? If you said your glove has a hole in it, why is that a bad thing?
Because maybe you could be touching something that should not, that should be touched with a good pair of gloves.
So imagine you just got done welding, right? And you're done and you're picking it up, right? That piece you just got done welding with might be a little warm, or might be even like red hot. So if you have a hole in it, if you go down to grab it,
You don't touch it.
you're gonna get burnt, right? So that's one thing that having holes in gloves. Can anyone else name another issue with gloves with holes?
I wouldn't say holes, but this one has like a super thick layer, like, I don't know what that means, like.
So it's kind of slippery?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so
you
that'd
might
be
drop
oil.
one.
I'm sorry, what?
So you might drop like this.
Exactly. So if gloves have oil on them, when you're trying to pick up parts, especially parts that are sometimes heavy, awkward to pick up, and things like that, if you have greasy or oily gloves, you have a more likely chance of slipping and dropping those. Yes, sir.
Maybe if there are holes in the glove, it might be less fire resistant in some way.
Right. So obviously, you're welding, and that creates lots of sparks or fire. And it's not only the heat from the metal itself, but it's also the sparks. So you're right. Sparks can get inside those holes. Ladies? Yes?
If there's a hole, then your skin could be exposed to like ultraviolet radiation.
That's a very good point. So if there is a hole, especially on, let's say, the back, UV radiation definitely can get in there, and you can get sunburn on the back of your hand or anywhere else there's a hole. So what about glasses? Who's got a pair of glasses on there, and what's good or bad about them?
Oh,
They're
I got
foggy.
So your glasses are fogging up a little bit. That can happen, yes. Why is that necessarily a bad thing or a good thing?
Because sometimes you can't see some. If it's foggy, you won't be able to see the thing that your other person is handing towards you, and so you might not know how to hold it.
Okay, so you're saying if it's foggy, it's going to impair your vision.
Yeah.
Right, so it may, whether you're walking, whether you're doing a task, or handing, like you said, a part to someone else, or they're handing it to you, that might become an issue.
Yes.
Okay?
I got a good one about these.
Okay?
They can go over glasses if you wear glasses.
Yes, you're exactly right. Those are, you picked the perfect pair. Those are the glasses that go over eyeglasses or seeing glasses that still shield your eyes from other debris. Girls?
These are scratched up.
So why might scratches on glasses be an issue?
They can like impair vision. So like if you're looking for something like small details, then there could be a scratching away that's like covering something important.
Okay, that's good. So scratches impair your vision also, especially from small details, because you can't tell if it's the scratch or the small detail you're trying to pay attention to. Example, if you're welding and you're trying to weld right on the seam, a very straight line that's very small, if you're not careful and you have scratch glasses, you're not going to be able to tell the seam away from the scratch on the lens. Any other questions on glasses? Okay, let's step back on the gloves just for 1 second. I get asked a lot, why are welding gloves so loose, right? Now I know these are somewhat tight. Those are actually TIG gloves, different type of welding. Remember I said TIG stands for tungsten inert gas. So essentially that is very, very slow, very clean. They don't give off a lot of sparks, and it's very, very relaxed pace, we'll say. However, these gloves, and the guys in the back, we have the normal, everyday welding gloves. Why do you think that these pair of gloves might need to be loose versus those? Can anyone think about that? This is very, yes ma'am.
So like if something happens and for some weird reason that catch a fire, you can take them off quickly.
That's actually not a bad guess. That's pretty close. So if something happens to this glove, I can get it off very quickly. So a great example, especially with new, unexperienced welders, they tend to not really focus on what they're touching. So they'll weld apart and then they'll go grab it and they'll be like, oh yeah, it's not really hot. And then after about 10 or 15 seconds, they start realizing that this glove just slows down the heat. It doesn't stop the heat. So that glove starts heating up, and then they're like, ow, I need to get this glove off. And so what you gotta do is you just throw it off. Versus these gloves, where if I put this on, and it's like, ow, or better yet, if a spark happens to go down in there, you don't wanna be, hey, it's hot. You know, oh, let me take it off. My hand's burning. Okay, okay. Oh, that's so much better. You know, that's like 20 seconds difference. So that's why these gloves are designed this way to get off in a hurry. Okay, can anyone name any other types of personal protective equipment? So PPE.
Welding mask.
A welding mask, very good.
Or
So,
helmet.
like I was saying earlier, UV radiation basically is an invisible light, you can't see it, but it burns your skin. So whenever I'm welding, I actually put this on, and then you're not going to see any of my skin. So I'll have gloves on, I'll have everything protected, so when I drop the hood, you actually can't see my skin at all. So anything on this side, you can shine a giant light at me, and it's not going to burn me. I've had some guys that try and use just the goggles, the old school welding goggles, and that's great for the eyes, but then your skin on your face is burnt. Okay, so that's enough about PPE and OSHA and ultraviolet radiation. Next slide, please. Now, classifying and using PPE. Other examples of PPE are earplugs. A lot of people are like, earplugs, we need those for it. Welding's not that loud. I agree, welding is typically not that loud of a process. However, once you start talking about sparks and things like that and you're welding, if sparks get into your ear, then that's going to hurt a little bit. That has happened to me before, and it's very, very painful. So that's typically why we wear earplugs. Steel toe boots, as I mentioned, I am currently wearing them. That's obvious. They stop things from crushing your toes. They also, if you look at mine, they stop a whole bunch of sparks. I have a whole bunch of sparks from welding whenever today I was welding and it had sparks all over it. So that's all things that can hurt. Next slide, please. Alright, so this will be the last one, identifying potential hazards in the shop. So grinders, cutting torches, and welders. Grinders, you don't want any loose clothing, things like that, for obvious reasons. If you have loose clothing like that, it's going to get caught into the grinder and pull you away. Cutting torches and welders are very, very similar as far as they give off sparks, and those sparks can go very, very far away. So you want to make sure anything flammable and anything that can explode, per se, or anything like that is far, far away. At least 15 feet is what they say. Now, we're almost out of time, so let's review real quick. PPE stands for personal protective equipment, so that's anything that can hurt you or harm you, that PPE is there to stop it from happening. And then safety glasses are examples, everything I'm wearing are examples and things like that. And don't forget about OSHA, which is the government entity that makes companies protect their employees. And then grinders and cutting torches and welders are all present potential hazards. Thank you for your time today, and I hope you enjoy your day.
Okay.